to Canute White, and you're listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Many of us have had challenges, life challenges that set us back. Let's call it setbacks that set us back. Some persons is like they're at a stoplight and the light says green and they're still there as if they cannot move. Many times, these life setbacks create this sort of endurance for us to move forward and would like someone, be it in our family or otherwise, to push us, give us a push start to achieve. Our guest today had gone through challenges and he didn't stop there. He ensured that he continued to achieve. He'll be talking to us about what he called the 5F system of achievement. He was a stuntman, he was a comedian, he was a part of academia, and he is ready to roll. It doesn't matter what goes on in his life. He continued to achieve. And he's going to be talking to us about that today. Those of you listening on your favorite podcast platform, welcome. Those of you on YouTube channel, Canute Media, welcome. We know that there are persons listening to us from Canada, United States, naturally, Jamaica, naturally, United Kingdom, Ukraine, Guyana, Ghana, Spain, France, Germany, to name a few. Welcome to Canute's Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. I'm going to be talking today with John Davis. I'm going to be inviting John Davis into the studio at this time to talk to us. John Davis, the corporate, talk to me. What's it? Corporate?
The corporate action hero. That would be me.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. You're going to be talking to us about that as well. But before you do all of that, John, who is John Davis?
Who is John Davis? John Davis is a guy, when he was a young boy, he always had a stick in his hand and pretending it was a sword and wanted to be a sword fighter. And what happened was, as I grew up, I never grew out of that. And I decided to become a stuntman, a fight director, and I ended up meeting two of the top fight directors in the country who started giving me their training for free. And I was going for my black belt in Taekwondo at the time. And what happened was I was invited to a friend's house to help him unload his van that was full of boxes that were 80 pounds each. And I climbed up in that van and I picked up that first box. And as I turned to set that box outside of the van, my spine broke in two and I collapsed. And they hauled me to the hospital paralyzed. Doctor said, Mr. Davis, you've got a condition known as spina bifida occulta. And basically, when he said that, my response, of course, was Gesundheit, because I had no idea what he's talking about. Basically what it was, three of my vertebrae never formed properly at birth. And when I turned and twisted, I literally broke my spine in half. The doctor said, you'll probably never walk again, and if you do, you'll never have a physical career. And during that time, I became enlightened to the writings of a man named Bruce Lee in his book called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and the concepts of staying very present and mental flexibility. By leveraging that and then moving on to discover what I would eventually call the 5Fs, I actually worked my way out of that bed. In the first, I would say the first 30 days, I was able to actually sit up on the side of the bed. Within 6 months, I was walking around. At a year, I was back to what I would consider normal physicality, not back to where I was strength-wise before. But at a year and 6 months, I gave myself a big present. I climbed up on top of a 3-story tower and I jumped off of it.
Then.
And I went on to do over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting stunt shows all over the world. I've worked with movie stars. I've climbed mountains around the world. I've been on top of Machu Picchu and Mount Sinai, and I have been all over the world. I've been to 30 countries. I've done everything that I have ever wanted to do after that because of what I learned because of that.
Yeah. So that shows your intention to go ahead, move ahead, life challenges. Doesn't matter what happened. But I have a question about this stuntmanship. I mean, it's It's an incredible thing. I mean, those of us who would never go there. What explain your first try at it? What was going through your head?
Well, I kind of backed into it because I was always fascinated by swordplay, and so I kind of got into swordplay first. And so the two gentlemen that I met were, one of them was the professional fight choreographer for the Folger Shakespeare Library. So I learned Elizabethan swordplay like right away, and so I went right into sword fights, and then slowly you start writing and creating shows. And then you're like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I jumped off a tower here? Or wouldn't it be
Right.
cool if I rode in here on a zip line? And eventually you kind of, you're starting to do those things. And you're like, wow, I should do this all the time because it's fun. It's really cool. And,
Wow.
it is very fun. It is very dangerous sometimes.
Okay,
But
I love that. I love
yeah,
you said it is very dangerous, but it's fun because not all
yeah,
of us can do it. Not all of us would want to do it, right?
right.
But I applaud you on that.
Well, and life. There is nothing that's ever been achieved in life without some risk,
Yeah,
and your job is to put yourself in places that you might have some risk and mitigate the issues. And
yeah,
so for me, I'm all about the idea of doing a 100-foot zip line or 300 feet in the air over an audience,
yeah.
but I'm going to make sure that cable I'm riding on is safetied off
Oh
and
yeah,
I'm safetied off and all the safety things are in place. So to me, it's all about making sure you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone and moving in motion towards your goals.
right. So there has never been. Well, I know that there might have been some level of fear going through this, right? But I'd like you to talk a bit about that for a while because you're
Well,
human as well, right?
oh,
You're human.
everybody's human.
Right.
Everybody's human. There's a difference between action heroes and superheroes. And
Okay. Cool.
let me kind of say that. Okay,
Right.
action heroes are ordinary individuals who create a super result.
Hmm.
Superheroes are people who wear their underwear on the outside of their pants and are radiated by some sort of goo and have superpowers. so
I
because
got that.
because of that, because they have superpowers, when they achieve super things, they're really not doing anything out of the ordinary. They're really kind of slackers if you think about it.
Right.
Action heroes are much more cool.
Cool.
So
Cool.
but action heroes are, like I said, ordinary individuals who are creating extraordinary
Yeah.
results.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. You said something. I went on your website and I saw something about let me see if I can find it. There's that quote that running across the screen there, right? You talk about success is created by dynamic individuals who are empowered to achieve. What
Yes.
is that saying?
Yes. Yes, what that's saying to me is dynamic means that you are not only that you are putting your thoughts, words, and deeds into full action. You are
Mhm.
leveraging your present moment to you can get the greatest fire. Now that only happens when when you are empowered to achieve, which means that you take your inner confidence, your faith. Now that statement I just made taps into several of my 5 F's, which we'll talk about in a bit. But that really is that inner core dynamic. One of the things I do when I go to speak to corporations, I say I
Yeah.
go into a company and I awaken their inner action heroes. Because we all have these limitations that we set on ourselves because of our past experiences and our subconscious beliefs.
Right.
And what I do is I go in there and I knock out I say, okay, let's start creating new ones. Let's start creating new subconscious beliefs by leveraging your present moment and making this moment as successful as possible. Once
Hmm.
you start making this moment as successful as possible, you literally start changing your subconscious belief because all your subconscious mind has two jobs. The first job is to store memories of present moments and give you a underlying belief because of that. The other thing the subconscious does is that when you consciously focus on something, your subconscious mind shows it to you. And
Hmm.
so, in other words, if like say for instance, I personally I love Jeeps. I've had
Yeah.
four of them in my lifetime, right? When I
Right.
drive down the road, I see Jeeps everywhere. I see
Cool.
every Jeep on the road all the time because my conscious mind is all about Jeeps, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
got
And
that.
so when you focus on something, you'll start to see it in your experience. So, I have to get the people out of focusing on what their subconscious belief is saying about them
Hmm.
and get
Hmm.
them into the power within themselves so that they can become dynamic. Dynamic meaning energy, power, motion.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting, John Davis. This is Canute Exploration. I'm Dr. Canute White. I'm sitting in with John Davis. Those of you watching on YouTube, welcome. Those of you listening on your favorite podcast platform, welcome. John, let's talk about the main course here. There's 5F approach. What's that, John?
All right, so 5 Fs. You already actually started me a little bit ago, and you didn't even realize you did.
Okay, cool.
Which is great.
Yeah.
When I ask audiences all over the world what is fear, they go quiet. They go completely quiet, and then somebody in the back of the room will say that old trope, false evidence appearing real, and, and I dismiss that because everybody says they say that all over the world. Trust me, it's heard everywhere. But the
Right.
reality of it is, when you look at it scientifically, fear is simply an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen, with you focused on a negative outcome. Fear, break it down further, is actually just negatively focused uncertainty. And so if you can change the negative focus. Now, the first of my 5 Fs is fearlessness. Now, how do you become fearless? Now, the interesting thing is fear comes with a primal response based on the fight or flight response. And the first reaction that anybody has in a fear response is they gasp for air. Right? It's like when you watch those National Geographic shows on TV, and there's always that doomed gazelle. Remember that doomed gazelle, right? He's
Right. Yeah.
He's out there eating the
Yeah.
grass in the field. It looks like this. It's like, right? And then
Yeah.
the lion hits the field. The first thing the gazelle does is go, right? And if you're a parent, if you've ever seen your kid almost hurt themselves, you've gone, right?
Oh yeah.
You've had gasping for air, right?
That
Well,
immediate
that is
action. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's a natural primal response. You ask anybody who's really in fear how they if they can breathe, they don't feel like they can breathe,
Okay.
right? And the reason they don't feel like they can breathe is not because they can't get air. It's because their body is conserving air. They have filled their lungs up, and they so that their body could run further and faster. That's why we do it naturally on a primal reaction.
Right.
Actors on Broadway are trained that if they forget their lines in front of thousands of people, they're literally
Yeah.
trained. They're trained to exhale. They're trained to go relax all their muscles, and it shuts off the fear response and turns
Okay.
the cognitive thinking being back on, and all their lines rush back into their head. So the first of the 5 Fs is fearlessness, and
Yeah.
the way you have to do that is first recognize you're in fear, label it as a fear, and then exhale and relax and release the fear.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Tell me though. I mean, you have had a childhood, and it's something I would like to talk about after this, right? But you have had a childhood that I suspect have a little fear in it. You know, all of us. You know, we are fearful of something, right?
Absolutely.
If it's even a big rat, so to speak, right?
Right.
But
Absolutely.
But is it that we have learned that sort of a fearfulness from that time? What do you think?
Absolutely. Fear is a lot of our fears are based in our subconscious belief. And for me personally, I had an alcoholic abuser father,
Okay.
and I was the one of the 7 kids he didn't like. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I
I was getting a
understand that.
lot. I was getting a lot of that. But and
Mhm.
here's another thing. Like say for instance, you have parents whose parents went through the Great Depression.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a fear of losing money or a lack mentality, and they're gonna hand that down to their kids. And you've got to break those cycles. And the way you do it is once again to realize that when you have a fear response, your body is literally going to go and gasp for
Oh
air.
yeah.
It's gonna tighten
Yeah.
up. You're gonna feel tight, and you're gonna feel like you can't breathe and you can't think.
Mm.
Exhale. Just break that cycle. Just say, I am changing that cycle, and
Yeah. Yeah.
exhale. Make a
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. So
Now,
you have to be talking to self
yeah,
talk.
self-talk, and that's the other thing is you want to make sure your self-talk is from you and not from somebody else,
Right. Oh yeah.
because that subconscious belief.
Yeah.
If you're living their subconscious belief, you're living their life and not your own.
Right.
You gotta live your own life, right?
Definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah, right. So my comedy show went on to go ahead and do 6 USO tours. So I actually went to the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. And
Okay.
when I talked to soldiers in the field,
Mhm.
I said, how do you go into a potential battle where you might get shot at or blown up? And they said the same thing. They have to exhale and they go, okay, we're doing this. And they go.
Yeah. And
But
then,
the next thing they said was really interesting. What they said was, but it's easier for us because we have an objective. We have something to focus on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, you got to fearlessly focus. That's my second F.
Okay.
Fearlessly
Go ahead.
focus, right?
Mhm.
Now, as you and I were just talking about,
Mhm.
you can focus on positive or you can focus on negative. And if you focus on negative, your subconscious mind will show you negative things. But
Yeah.
if you focus on positive, it'll show you positive things. I mean, I'm sure that you know negative people in your world, don't
Oh,
you?
yeah. Of course. You know,
Yeah.
I'll do. Right. Yeah.
Don't they always have something to be negative about?
Tell you, very
Always.
pessimistic. Yeah. No matter.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because they're focused on negative, so they're seeing negative, right?
Right. Right.
That's the way
Mhm.
it works. But if
Mhm.
you focus on positive, then what happens is you change your subconscious belief. Because the interesting thing about your subconscious belief is this. I said earlier the subconscious mind is built up of two things. It's the thing that shows you what you're focusing on, and it's all this subconscious belief that are from your present moment.
Okay.
Well, if you can change your present moment to positive and successful and in motion,
Mm-hmm.
you have just stacked a new subconscious belief behind you. And the more of those you stack behind you, you know, they say 21 days creates habit.
Yeah.
More of those you stack behind you, you're changing your subconscious belief. You're changing what you can achieve in life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so staying here and making darn sure that you're stacking present moments, your focus is very positive in your present moment
Yeah.
and successful. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's only
Yeah.
one moment. Go ahead.
One other thing that perhaps somebody would want to ask, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm in a situation where I cannot focus. They would ask, John, how can I focus in this situation? So, what are you talking about being focused? My
I
present
am
moment is my present moment. What
I
would
am
you say?
so happy you asked that question, my friend. I can't tell you how happy I am you asked that question. Um, you only have one moment that you live.
Mm-hmm.
You don't live in the past. You don't live in the future. You only have one moment that thought, word, and deed can be active, and
Mm-hmm.
it's your present moment. And whatever you say or think about your present moment is what you're creating into your experience. You know,
Right.
Buddha says, what you think, you become, you create your world. Krishna said, you are the culmination of your thought.
Mm-hmm.
Gandhi said, you must be the change you want to see in the world. And Jesus said, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. And Moses said, God's name, when he talked to the burning bush, was, I am. And if you are saying to yourself, I can't, what you're actually saying is, I am not able in
Yeah.
your present moment. And by stacking I am, I can't, and I won't, I'm going to pull a quote from Henry Ford. Henry
Okay.
Ford, he said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, right? Because
Okay.
you are the creator of your experience.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if so, one of the things I had to do to get out of my bed when I was
Mm-hmm.
with my back injury, I
Mm-hmm.
had to remove certain words from my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And the words I started to take out first were wanting, needing, hoping, and trying,
Mm-hmm.
because none of them are creative in your present moment. I
Yeah.
am wanting God or universe or whatever you believe in is going to give you wanting or needing or hoping or trying, and none of those feel good. None of them are creative. I had to say I am a stuntman
Yeah.
instead of I
Yeah.
am paralyzed.
Yeah.
Those are two different things and two different
Yeah.
beliefs, right? And the other thing is, I had to not believe my doctor, which is I'm not in any way, shape, or form telling you not to believe your doctors.
Right.
I'm telling you that you are responsible for your experience. Now, I know a lot of people who are paralyzed who are living amazing lives and are millionaires and doing all kinds of things because they didn't let the limitation. I am very lucky in the fact that I didn't remain paralyzed, that I was able to
Yeah.
work my way past that. But the reality of it is, if someone's telling you what's going to be, you get to choose whether that's true or not.
Okay.
And I had to say, I am going to be a stuntman. I am going to be a fight director.
Right.
I am going to do these things. And then I took my thought, word, and deed, and put focus on those,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as that happened, it built into the next one, the third one,
Right.
which is faith, belief,
Okay.
confidence.
So the first
Because
one was fear, then focus, no faith. Okay.
fearlessly focus with faith,
Right.
right? And
Okay.
faith. When I say faith, I don't mean I'm not talking religious faith.
Okay. That's all right.
Literally talking confidence, belief. But
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing is, the more you focus and the more you stack these present moments that are positive and successful, your faith will build. Your faith will build because you'll be seeing the results of those present moments that you're stacking.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the sooner your faith builds, what happens is you get more and more energized. You get empowered from
Okay.
within,
Yeah.
and your present moment becomes more dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
right? And dynamic just means that you're creating basically.
Yeah.
So we got fearlessly focused with faith, but the next one's the hard one. And okay,
We should be fearless about that, right?
right. The
I'm
next one
sorry.
is the
All right,
next one
cool.
is the hard one, and it's one that you have and I have already kind of mentioned already early on in our conversation.
Okay.
The next one's follow through.
Okay.
Actually doing something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
you actually come to that space where you actually have to take an action. Well, if you're in fear, you're not going to take an action.
Mm-hmm.
If you're focused on something wrong, you're not going to take an action. And if you don't have faith in it, you're not going to take an action.
Yeah.
Right? So when you get to the point where you're actually taking an action and then you don't, you need to reassess what the fear is. And you need to start that process and go, okay. Now the reality of it is you're going to be addressing your fears all the way through.
One for
You're
me,
not
John. So you're suggesting when I reach the follow-up aspect of this thing,
follow through.
follow through, right? And it seems that if I cannot do that, I cannot, go through that follow through um, stage, then I need to go back.
Well, you need to assess your fear. Here's the
Yeah,
thing
to
is,
assess the fear, to see what's
right.
going on there. Okay.
Well, see, the thing is, the 5 Fs are not linear, so it's not like you start over again. It's they are constant and simultaneous. So in other words, when you're in one phase of this and you're not taking an action, was it a fear? Was I focused wrong? Do I have faith in this? So they're all happening at once. But yeah, I will say to you, if you are not taking an action,
Right.
there's a fear. There's some fear, and it might be just as simple as I'm afraid that I'm really much more comfortable sitting here on my couch, and I won't be as comfortable.
Right.
Right? That's a fear too,
I got
right?
you. Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who get mired in what I call their velvet cage. They're very comfortable where they are because they understand the circumstances.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that they're still in a cage. They can't go any further until they can walk over, open the door, and fly. But they're very comfortable in there because it's velvet in there, right? And the interesting thing is that you can't go anywhere or do anything in a cage. In fact, what you'll end up doing is stagnating. And like when you look at water in nature, water flowing down a hill, it's full of oxygen. It's full of life. It's really teeming with just air and just phenomenal. Take that same water and have it hit the bottom of the mountain and go into a puddle, and that puddle, as sitting there stagnant, goes poisonous, and the bugs lay their eggs in it, and it because life is about motion. You're constantly having to set new goals and strive for new things. And if you're not in motion, you're just in stagnation.
John, as you talk about that, I reflect on the situation back in Taiwan. I think it was a couple of years ago, these guys in the cave. I mean, we all sat in front of the television. We were shaking for them. And I could use that sort of analogy, if you may. I'm not sure if you would agree, right? You're in that cage, and some of the things that these boys had gone through. We are all very happy that they're out, despite the death of one person. But would you use that analogy in that cave situation that we put
Sure, absolutely. To get out of that cave, they had to go underwater. They had to literally go into the unknown, and they didn't know whether they'd make it out the other side of that water, right? So they had to put themselves out of that cage to get out of there. There's a famous Hindu prophet named Swaminarayan, and it was very interesting. He was an 11-year-old boy who reached enlightenment. And at one point, he was wandering. He did a 13,000 kilometer trek around India, and at 11 years old. And he walked into this village, and the village had been having an issue with man-eating lions that were coming at nighttime.
Yeah.
And so he got to the village at dusk, and somebody said, "Hey, young boy, come into my house so you're not outside at night during for the lions." And he said he refused. And they came out the next morning, and he was sitting by that tree, and the lion was asleep about 5 feet away. And they said, how did this happen? And the boy said, because I am without fear, he gave me nothing to be fearful for.
Interesting.
Right? And it's an interesting comment. But if you think about the idea, this is, Your fear is your control. Fear, as I said, is not rooted in your present moment. Fear is you're focusing on a negative outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're focused on a negative outcome, then you're just going to create a negative outcome because that's what your focus does. It's creative because that's
I
your
like
present
that.
moment.
I like that. It's not rooted in your present situation, and that's true.
It's
You
true.
know,
Right.
it's more futuristic.
Because I promise you this: if you're afraid a lion is going to eat you, when the lion actually gets there and starts eating you, it won't be a fear response that you're having. It'll be an adrenaline and pain response you're having.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. So it's a very different animal, right? So anyway, so far we got fearlessly focus with faith and follow through, right? Take those actions. The last one is the one that is kind of the maintenance one, I call it.
Okay.
It's flexibility. Flexibility. So say, for instance, I have a big goal set and I'm trying to get to this big giant goal. And something comes up that seems contrary to what I'm trying to achieve. Right? Which always happens. Oh, there's always something that comes up that seems trying to stop us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as I said, if we're focused on a goal, our subconscious mind is showing us how to get to it. So if we're truly, honestly, positively focused on a goal and something comes up that seems contrary, that's because our subconscious mind is telling us this needs to be addressed for you to get to your goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not saying this is here to stop you. Because there's nobody against you. You're the only one who could be against you. And so you need to make sure that your mind is in play of getting the goal and staying in that space. What's interesting about it, most people and almost everybody in the world does this.
Yeah.
They sit in this present moment and they set a giant goal. And then they sit there and they look at that goal and they go, God, it's so big, it's so daunting, it's so huge. And it's like, oh my God, it seems like it's such a giant thing.
Yeah.
How am I going to get to that? Well, the interesting thing is you never get to it. No one ever gets to it. Because you don't get to it. You'll never go to your future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your future is coming to you because all your future is a place where you set goals for your next present moment. When you experience your outcome, it'll be in your present moment. So what you have to do is make solid present moment successes that are in alignment with your goal, and that goal will come to you and surround you. So you don't have to do the giant thing. You have to do the small things, and you have to do the small things well.
Yeah. Or do you think, John, that we talk about negativity, right? Negative people, and being pessimistic. But how do you think that the persons who are negative, their advice to you, right? Don't do that. You'll never get there. How do you think that affects you, the individual, who are trying to get there? Talk to me about that.
So you said that really well, and you broke it down into an interesting sort of dichotomy because what you said was they're telling you can't, and you're trying to get there. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I would say is get rid of the word trying.
Okay.
All right, because if you take their belief, you're living their life and not your own.
Right.
Right. Are you doing it or aren't you? You know, there's a famous spiritual master. His name was Yoda.
Yeah.
And he said, "Do or do not. There is no try." Right?
Yeah.
Do or do not. There is no try. So somebody's going to come to you. Now, the best thing you can do for that negative person is succeed.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Because if you succeed, they go, "Oh, it was possible."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's you can be the consequence for their negative. I'll tell you an interesting story. I went into a restaurant one time, and me and another guy went into a restaurant, and the waitress came over, and the first thing she said to us was, "I'm having a bad night, and I'm so sorry. It's going to reflect in your service."
Okay.
And I was, the guy I was at dinner with instantly was mad because she's going to give me poor service, right? I turned to her and I said, "I'm so sorry you're having that kind of night. Why don't you sit down? I'll get you some dinner and I'll take care of your tables." And she looked at me. She started laughing, right?
Yeah.
So then I started changing her focus on being funny and positive.
Yeah.
What happened was by the end of my dinner, she was laughing and joking and hanging out at our table, and all of her tables were getting great service because she felt good.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Your experience in the year 2000, I traveled to Egypt, and I spent a month going through Egypt. And as I traveled through Egypt, I was treated like a prince everywhere I went. And I mean, but I love the people. I love the country, and
Yeah.
I expressed that everywhere I went. And I'll tell you how well I was treated. When I went to Mount Sinai, and when I got to the Mount Sinai, I went to the hotel, and that's a grand word for saying, a bunch of shacks. But the guy said, I met the manager, became friends with him, and 1 o'clock in the morning, I started climbing the mountain. Now you start at 1 o'clock in the morning because when you start at 1, you get to the top at sunrise. You
Right.
get to see
Definitely.
sunrise over the Sinai Peninsula. It's amazing. And so at 1 o'clock in the morning, I start climbing. At 2:30 in the morning, in the darkness on the side of Mount Sinai, I hear, John, John, and that was kind of crazy to hear my name being called in the darkness on the side of Mount Sinai. He goes, John, oh, yes, Lord. But it
Yeah.
wasn't God. It wasn't God. It was
All right.
it was the manager of the hotel running up the mountain to give me his coat because he thought I would be cold.
Oh.
That's how I was treated. So the next day I came down from the mountain and I went to St. Catherine's Monastery, which is a Byzantine monastery right at the base. And I went into the monastery, beautiful, all this beautiful old Byzantine art and all the priests with the long, Greek priests with the long beards and
Right.
incense burning. It was spectacular. And suddenly I hear this voice. He says, "Hey, are you American?" I said, yes, I am. He says, "Have you been having problems since you've been here?" I said, "No, but everybody's treating me like a prince." He says, "Everywhere I go, people want to fight me." And 5 minutes later, I wanted to fight the guy. Because he was a jerk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're living positive and when you're putting positive out, you will experience positive in your life. When you put out negative, you're going to experience negative in your life. And he was experiencing his fear and negativity
Yeah.
because he was expecting trouble. And I was expecting to have a great time and meet wonderful people. And I
Yeah.
had a great time and I met wonderful people.
You know,
Really had a
John,
wonderful time.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. And it seems as if, okay, this thing about being optimistic when you're in a situation where in your mind the normal person would never be optimistic, right? Do you think that sometimes people think that, hey, I'm lying to myself to be optimistic about that, I'm not being honest? You have persons who say that.
Absolutely. And those are the people who don't believe that they create their experience. Because once you start to believe that you create your experience, then you're like, it's just silly to not be positive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I'm not in any way immune to negativity. Now let me
Right.
just say that
Right.
when the doctor said to me, John, you may never walk again, and you'll never be a stuntman, a fight director, or a martial artist, I went to some very dark places and considered suicide and everything else
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that was my goal in life, was to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I had to grab my own inner power, and thank God my friend gave me that book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do,
Mhm.
because which really, if you look back at it, it's kind of a cruel joke to tell the martial artist who just told to never do martial arts again, give him a martial arts book by the greatest martial artist that ever lived, right? Right. But that book was life changing for me because that
Mhm.
whole phrase of being like water and flexible, and there was a small little piece in there about be here now, be very present in this moment. And the
Yeah.
more I leveraged into that present moment and made that present moment positive and fearlessly focused with faith and followed through with
Yeah.
flexibility, what
Yeah.
happened was I ended up getting everything I ever wanted.
Cool. Cool.
Everything I've ever wanted, you
Yeah.
know, and
Interesting.
the more authentic of myself I can be. Now, someone said to me the other day, I feel like I always have to have people around me, and I said that's because you're not comfortable by yourself,
Oh.
But and you have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable with who you are,
Yeah.
and be full of you, to be loved for being you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you have to. For me, I love to travel and I love to do those things. And because I
Yeah.
love those things, I'll give you just a quick example.
Yeah.
I had a lady who I was working with. She was agoraphobic. She actually could never leave her house. She was
Right.
terrified of going
Mm.
outside. I started working with her, and in under 2 years, she took a solo trip to Africa, and climbed a mountain and hung out with gorillas. Right.
Yeah.
This is a woman who could never leave her house. Now, the interesting story to me was driving down the road with her one day. I'm driving down the road. We're just talking, and just an easy drive. And she asked me this very simple question. She says,
Mhm.
"How come cars merge easily with you?" And my
Yeah.
response to her was, "Because I love to drive."
Yeah.
Because if I love to drive, I'm putting out this energy of calm and easy. I'm not putting out a focus on fear and negativity of afraid that car is going to merge with me. I'm afraid hit me when
Yeah.
they merge. I don't think that way. I think, okay, someone's coming in, let's let them in.
So you saying that, John? How do you know kind of connect passion with with fear? I mean, is it that if I'm passionate about something, I will just go into it despite
Well,
the danger that I may be perceiving?
the question is it a danger you're perceiving, or is there a real danger? And for instance, if you're afraid of heights and you're about to jump out of an airplane, that might be a tough time for you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But if you go to a place that does skydiving, and you meet the trainer and they explain to you all the safeties, and you get the information that you need to feel safe in that prospect, it's still going to feel like a dangerous thing when you jump out. And
Right,
Lord
right.
knows it is, but you're going to end up having an experience of being much more confident. When you don't, well, I said earlier, fear is negatively focused on certainty.
Right.
But the word uncertainty is based in the lack of knowledge. So you want to look at what if you're going into something new, you want to educate yourself about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When I went from doing a comedy sword fighting show to being a corporate motivational speaker, I had to educate myself on what it was, because for many years I wore tights and lived in the woods doing sword fighting shows, right? So
Right, right.
how are these corporate people going to take the guy in tights seriously, right? It was after the third speech I realized I should stop wearing the tights. But that was a joke. But anyway.
Yeah, I didn't get that part, John, but that's all right. But
Just imagine I'm sitting there talking to a Fortune 500 company wearing tights, right?
yeah.
When I was in Iraq, my biggest fear was not bombs or guns. My biggest fear was actually having my helicopter go down and me getting out of that helicopter wearing tights.
Interesting. Hey, John, what I want to do, right, is that the fact that you were a fight director, I mean, forgive me for that. I was educated in the British system, right? I'm Jamaican, so you have to understand how direct, how we pronounce that. But tell me, you were a flight director, right?
A fight.
Sorry, not flight. Fight
right,
director. Tell us about that.
What a fight director is basically it's the next level above a fight choreographer. A choreographer comes in and teaches people to look like they're creating violence for a show. And what a fight director does is it takes the scene from the beginning and does the emotional content up to and through the fight. So I'm doing both the acting exercise up to and the choreography, and doing the whole process. So when you go and see a play like a Romeo and Juliet, and you see the entire sword fighting scene, a fight director comes in and directs the emotional content of that scene all the way through the fight.
Oh.
And then in Hollywood, a fight director will go into a film, and their job is to create the fight scene, but also create the fight scene with very specific camera angles in mind.
Okay.
And so on a lot of productions, the fight director will actually have his team film the actual fight and show up on set with a film of what the fight is supposed to look like, and then the director will then put the actor into that fight. Basically.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. Can you describe one of those episodes that you have directed somehow? I'd love to hear, I guess.
Well, there's a lot. When I did film work, the majority of my work was done in the background. So I'd go in and I would teach them how to do gun spinning or whips or nunchucks or a fight piece. When I did stage work, I did a lot of live stunt stage work, a lot of it. And I would be the guy who would direct and create the entire show. Now, to give you an idea of a big sequence from one of my live stunt shows. So these guys are on stage and they're they're fighting this one guy, and he's getting completely beat. There's like 4 guys against one guy, and they're all sword fighting, and he's getting beat up like crazy. So then all of a sudden, from the back of the audience, 300 feet in the air, someone zip lines over the stage, lands on the upper deck, goes running over to the second-story balcony, does a forward flip off of the balcony, lands on top of the people down below, comes up, fights all of them down to nothing, eventually chases the bad guy up on top of a big tower, and then throws a bomb at the base of the tower. The tower explodes, the tower collapses, the guy rides the tower down into the fall pad. So that's a basic sequence that I would have directed. And we had every so often we'd have a glitch with that tower.
Yeah.
Sometimes the tower, we would hit the bomb and then we'd hit the switch to drop the counterweight so the tower would collapse and the tower wouldn't collapse. And I was standing backstage one time because I had directed, and we've been having problems with the tower, so I wanted to watch the tower go.
Right.
And the bomb goes off, and the guy's standing up there, up on top of the tower, and he's like, and he looks over and he sees behind the scenes, he sees me running at full speed, fast and as hard as I can, over to the tower, and I punched the leg out of the tower with my fist and collapsed the tower. It was the greatest moment of my life as a fight director. Like, pow! Ah! My one fist knocked down an entire tower and threw a guy into a fall pad.
So the stuntmanship comes in, right?
Yeah. you have those.
I love that.
And people ask me all the time, have I ever been hurt? And I say, absolutely, I've been hurt. And then I start doing this. I got a rapier stab here. I got a broadsword scar here. I have a nunchuck scar here. I have a broadsword cut here. And I have wrinkles here because I'm an old man.
Yeah.
That's a lot of worry lines.
No, I got that. Good one. Hey, you're professor. You were a college professor at once. Talk to us about that.
Well, this is a great way to say it. I decided after my wife and I split, she moved to Ohio with my son, and I came out here to Ohio to be near my son. And I decided when I got here, I said, well, I should get another kind of job. And I've already been doing all this other stuff. So, well, I think I'll teach college. Now, my degree was in architecture, right?
Okay.
So I got myself really seriously focused on teaching at a college somewhere.
Yeah.
And what happened was, remember I said your subconscious mind will start to show you things?
Right, I remember that.
Right? So I got hired to do fights, to fight direct the fight scenes for a play called My Favorite Year at one of the local theaters up in Cleveland. And I went in and I did the fight scenes. And as I finished the fight scenes, the guy who was the star of the show says, "Man, you're really good. You're a really good fight director." He says, Have you ever thought about possibly doing some teaching in the area? I said, "Man, I would love to. I really want to do some college teaching." He says, "Well, would you do a singular master class?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that." He says, "I'm the dean of theater at Oberlin College."
Yeah.
And so he brought me into Oberlin College for one class, and I finished the class. And he said, "Well, I really only wanted to show you this class so that I could see how you taught. How'd you like a semester?" And I taught there for 6 years.
Just like that. That starts, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and it relates to being a motivational speaker. We are seeing it here now, right? Because you're being motivational, right?
Right.
So
well, that's the goal. The goal is really, honest to God, to awaken people to their own inner power.
Important.
And that's one of the things that, like today, I want to make sure your audience gets
Right.
my 5F workbook. That 5F workbook is a free gift, and when I say free, I mean free. It's a link. You go there, you download the book. I don't even get your email address. I take nothing from you. This is about bringing value to you, not taking something from you. But that book, it's a short little workbook. It'll help you set and reach goals. It'll show you the 5F system as you're going through it. And there's also on that same page, there's a link for not a link. There's several other videos on there explaining the 5Fs. And various things of that nature. So
yeah, I think I'm seeing it here. I'm running across the screen. For those of you who are listening on your favorite podcast platform, and do you want to read that out for them, John?
It's really easy. Corporateactionhero.com /gift.
Right. So you got that. Those of you listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast and your favorite podcast platform. I'm Dr. Canute White. I'm sitting in with John Davis. John Davis, the corporate action hero. We want to go there, John. Tell us, and that's a trademark, I realize. Cool. Tell us
Well,
about
if you had
corporate.
a name like John Davis too, you would find a brand quick.
Okay, I got you. I have the name Canute White, and I found a brand, Canute Exploration. Got you. Yes,
That is
John.
the best. That's the
Tell
best.
you, right? Tell me about that, though, John. I love that trademark.
Well, like I said, my name is John Davis, so that is one of the most generic names in history, and so and there's several other speakers who are named John Davis. So I really had to come up with something that was dynamic. The other thing is in the speaking industry, you can be a topic speaker or you can be someone who is actually sought after as a speaker. And what I bring is unique and different. I use whips and nunchucks in my speeches, and when I do my main corporate action hero speech. There's a total of 7 people who are eventually on stage with me, but the last person I bring to the stage, I pick the most timid person I can find. I bring them to the stage, and in under 5 minutes, they learn to crack a whip and take targets out of my hand.
Oh, okay, cool.
And that person has a life-changing experience because they've just done something in front of all their peers, and sometimes it's thousands of people they're doing it in front of, and then the people in the audience who know that person is a timid person, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe they did it." And it awakens that interaction. And right now, as we're coming out of COVID, right now is really the time that teams need motivation. A lot of times motivational speakers get hired when times are good and they want to celebrate. But that's not when you need a motivational speaker.
Tell you, right?
You need a motivational speaker now when the things are tough, right?
Yeah.
And the corporate action hero, I chose the words corporate action hero very intentionally. Action means create motion, start momentum, or to do something. Hero is someone who achieves extraordinary results in service of others. And so I want to do stuff to create service for others, and I want to do it where they need it most. And it's in the business world where it's needed most right now.
Oh, yeah. And I'm happy you said that because I realize that you have talked with persons from a number of companies, and including FedEx, Rainbow International Restoration, and Nationwide, USO. Talk to us about that. Who are some of your other clients? And
I've been to Smuckers. I've been LG. I've been hundreds and hundreds of clients I've spoken for. I guess that's the cool part about what I do. What I do is about mindset and getting people into that positive work culture and positive momentum. So it crosses all industries. So I'm not industry specific. I am literally someone who goes in there and awakens people to their power. So that's the goal is to go in there and get them going. And what's really cool is now that we've done COVID, I went off and during that process became a certified virtual speaker as well. So if for some reason you can't have me live, I still do virtual events as well. And you can get a virtual event in the process. Of course, live with whips and nunchucks is a lot more exciting.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I've had experience in industrial workplace counseling / workplace counseling, right? My first degree was in that, right? I'm very much involved in organizational leadership and industry. My thing is that, go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead.
My thing is that there are a number of workers pre-COVID, really, who they're having challenges, and there is this thing about the moral, that prevent the workplace, the organization from reaching its goals because they're personal. And a lot of people don't understand. There's absenteeism, they're not there, and there is also presentism. You're there, but just not doing anything.
Right. Your business is as strong as its weakest attitude.
Right.
And if you've got a weak attitude in play, I'll tell you, it's interesting. When I took over theme parks, I directed theme parks, and I would come in and I would look at the situation. I would see what was actually going on before I made any sweeping changes. But what I usually found was there were some big egos at the top who were holding themselves in that big ego position by putting other people down. And they seemed like they were the most valuable person to the show because that's what they were selling. And a lot of times I would fire that person. And everybody go, oh my God, how can you fire them? They're the biggest producer, whatever. Well, when I fired that one person, the 5 people they were keeping down came up and became better than them, right? So what happened was I took out the one attitude that put everybody else down. I spoke one time for a company, and their whole thing was creating competition within the company against the people you're working with, right?
Okay.
And I got in there, and the first day I realized, man, this is a negative workplace. And the more I dealt with the owners of the company, I realized it came from the top down. They were literally fostering this negativity. And I left that place, and I said to somebody, I will bet you in 5 years that company is either failing or gone. Well, it's been 7 years ago I spoke to them, and they are non-existent now. That positive workplace makes people want to stay. When I go into companies that have a real good value system and a positive work culture, then you see people who are there for 20 years working for the same company. When right now the average lifespan of a job in the world is 4 years.
Oh.
And it's 4 years right now. And when you look at these companies that have people there for 20 years, 30 years, even 10, 15 years, you're looking at work environments that are conducive to keeping people. And there's been a big shift in the corporate environment right now towards values and family feel. And I do a lot of speaking about the company is a family, and we're here to help you achieve your purpose. And when I ask my audiences all over the world what's the most important thing to them, they never say their job, right? They always say their family. And so the companies that right now are showing their employees how their families are benefiting from them working there are keeping employees.
Yeah. Look at post-COVID, John. I mean, I'm happy that I have somebody like you here. We're in this COVID pandemic thing. What do you see post-COVID for organizations? How do you see organizations forming, reforming, reshaping after COVID?
I think it's going to be hugely reshaped, and I think it's really interesting. And my industry, the speaking industry, we had what I would consider like the Marvel superhero blip. Half of our speakers went away, and all the work, right? But when that happened, I stayed flexible, and I started upping my video game and my virtual game. And I think this whole thing that we found now of virtual programs, I think companies have realized that, when there are people who were working at home virtually, they were still getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And they weren't. And do they really have to pay the overhead costs of all those office spaces? I think COVID has shown us very well that we can work remotely and effectively change a lot of things. Another thing that if corporations would move to a remote model like that, the other thing that would happen is you'd have a lot less cars on the road. You'd have a lot less pollution in the air. Everything would change. And for the speaking industry, because I did take the time and not drop into my fear when it happened, I am now leveraged as I come out of COVID. And by the way, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm getting called every day for bookings. People are calling me every day for live events. So it's happening. It's already coming. But I know full well when I come out of this, I'm going to have live events. I'm going to have virtual events. I'm going to have online courses. I'm going to be finishing my book this year because I had time to write. Right. So all this stuff is coming together because of the adversity that came out.
I love to say COVID positive.
COVID positive. You got to say COVID. And the most positive thing about COVID is that right now I can do this live interview with you and not wear pants.
I got you. Don't get caught,
though. Don't visualize.
No, that's all right. Don't get caught.
Yeah.
So COVID is really positive, and I am hoping that individuals are taking time out to do something, to get something out of the other side of COVID, right? And the other side of COVID, that is, right? Because it's important to take this time to learn something new, to do something while you're sitting at home, right? So that's critical, John.
And any adversity can be used to propel you forward. I would not have done all of the things I did if my back didn't break. And I would not have virtual programs, and I would not have all those, online courses had COVID not happened.
Yeah.
So, you have to look at any adversity as an opportunity, not an obstacle. And
Yeah.
that's just mindset. You just change. Okay, that's happening. What am I doing now? You how am I going to work with it?
John, you're a very interesting person. I mean, former stuntman, fight director slash director. As I said, I was British trained, so you have to understand that. And what I'd like to find out though, what your childhood was like. Who was Little John, so to speak?
Who was Little John? little John became Big Bad John.
Okay, all right.
Um, Little John, as I said earlier, had an emotional abusive father who really knocked his self-esteem and self-worth down to nothing. And Little John became an introvert. And Little John had a hard time finding friends who liked him. And Little John, by the time he was 12 years old, was 265 pounds.
Okay.
And was a gigantic kid who was just big-hearted and always being emotionally knocked down. And it wasn't until I found acting later on in life that I ended up coming out of my shell and finding out who I was.
Yeah.
But that child, I could live that lifestyle now and still never have done anything that I've done. My back wouldn't have broken had I not changed who I was.
Yeah.
Right? Right. I never probably would have known that I had a spina bifida had I not had a real physical career. But that child overcame all that.
Okay.
And that child overcame that, and then that stuntman overcame that back injury.
Yeah.
And any time that any obstacle came up, that little boy back then is the one who did it.
Yeah.
I worked with Brad Pitt and David Duchovny. I worked with people. Friends of mine did the fight choreography for Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Highlander. These are friends. None of that would have happened to that young boy if he didn't put himself out of his comfort zone and try different things.
Yeah. In terms of being paralyzed, that was from your Little John, right?
No, that was when I was 22.
22. Okay.
22.
Right.
Little John was just literally an emotionally abused kid who was very introverted and very much afraid all the time.
Okay.
And really felt unloved.
Right. How about adolescent John? That teenager adolescent, yeah.
Adolescent John. Well, he had all the same. he had all the same issues as the earlier kid,
Okay.
right? But now he had acne, and girls didn't like him, and
I know what you're saying.
all the stuff.
Right, I know what you're saying.
Everything I said about the little one was compounded in adolescence. Thank you very much. Thank you, puberty.
we all went through something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a 17-year-old son right now. And,
cool.
And he's
what's his name?
His name is Kynan Davis.
Hey,
I doomed myself. Kynan is a Welsh word that means king, so he thinks he's royalty. But now he's 3 inches taller than me. I'm a 6'1" man. He's 6'4" at 17. And
wow.
He comes over and he rests his arm on top of my head. And, he's lording that over me right now. But I remember where he was emotionally, and I'm like, well, yeah, you can do that, but I'm in a better place.
Yeah. John, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. This is Canute Exploration. You're listening to Dr. Canute White, and I'm sitting in with John Davis, the corporate action hero, trademark. I love it. But John, there is this group of females, right, who had their first child during the teenage stage of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Teenage pregnancy, we call it, right?
Yeah.
And more so, there's this group of female who are in the teenage stage now as we speak, and they're pregnant. Mm-hmm. There are other issues, maybe not knowing the father, and those challenges and so on. these group of females are often stopped, are often stopped by the setback of pregnancy. Feel like they cannot go any further. Your 5F approach, how do you use that to talk to these group of females, John?
Well, any adversity comes with an illicit fear response. And once again, I say, if you've decided to stop, that's because you have chosen to be in fear. And first thing I would say is realize, okay, in this moment, you're in this situation. Okay, what can you make the best of this? How can you make the best of this? What's the positive outcome you can see from this? And if you can't see one now, then talk to people who can see one. Surround yourself with positive people and positive environments. Put yourself in a place where you can change that attitude, because your experience that you're going through right now will directly be affected and directly be shown to you by what you choose. Remember, today's choices are tomorrow's outcomes. So if you're choosing today that today is going to be a bad and a negative experience, you're creating a bad and negative outcome. So, you know what? You've got a new child in the mix. Children are wonderful. Children are fun. Children, I have one myself. I personally didn't have it, but my wife did.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
yeah,
the thing is that you have to realize that there are a lot of people who have had children in this world. That's why we have so many people, and all of them are still moving. Most of them, anyway. And
yeah.
you can be one of the ones who is still moving and creating something better. And here's something else. If you've had a rough experience in your life and you have a child coming in, what a great opportunity for you to be the action hero for them and show them how to actually live a great life and give them what you want. My son never had the experience that I had with my father.
Yeah, yeah, very very interesting, very interesting. Because these females, they're really going through a lot, right? And they're not able to focus using your approach, right? There's this fear of what next,
Right.
and
Well, hang on though. You said they're not able to focus. They're only not able to focus if they choose to not be able to focus.
mhm,
It is up to them to be able to make that choice. Today's choices are tomorrow's outcome. And like I said before, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So why don't you switch from can't to can? I am able. I am a good mother. I am a good person who is bringing a good person into this world. Is something far different from I am destroyed. My life is over. Those are much different thoughts. So change yourself into being a very positive influence. You have the opportunity right now to bring someone into this world who will make the world better. So why don't you focus on that, and then you'll have something really good and something to look forward to every day. I'm bringing a great person into the world.
yeah. And John there was talking to the females who have now pregnant and they're teenagers, right? Experiencing what we call teenage pregnancy. And John is saying that you can make it, you can achieve, right? Don't let that life setback set you back. That's very interesting, though, John. But I stay with me for a while, right? This is Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Let us look, John, at this whole thing about mindset. I want to go back there for a while because that's critical. In psychology, we have a thing that we call social constructivism,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about mindset as well. It's all
Right.
perception, and I know it plays out because naturally your thought process, your feeling, then your action. We said that in psychology. But talk to me more about mindset.
Well, mindset is the key to achievement. When you drop into something called cognitive dissonance, where you're thinking
Right.
one thing but acting a different way.
Yeah, I want you to
What
explain that, John. Thank you for that. All right, cool.
right, right,
Yeah,
right. That cognitive dissonance, you really, you're going into a situation and you're like, I don't believe I should do this, but I'm doing it anyway.
right.
And what you're actually doing is you're at a crossroads of mindset turbulence. And that mindset turbulence is where you don't thrive, right? If you really want to thrive in your life, you need to find the things that you believe in then act towards those things. One of the things that when I was directing theme parks, I oftentimes would get into big struggles with the people who own the theme parks because they would say, do this, and tell me that I'm supposed to do a certain thing that I know is not only immorally wrong, morally wrong, but it's definitely an immoral act. But they're telling me things that I should do that I just think would be horrible for me on a karmic level, definitely. So, and I became known for be the person to explain why I wouldn't do it. And the interesting thing was, I was the one who kept my job because they always knew where they stood with me. When you get into a cognitive dissonance and you're getting into that turbulence, and I call it turbulence more than dissonance because you literally are in like the riptide because it's tearing you apart because you can't go in two directions at once. You come to a fork in the road, you don't go left and right.
Right. Definitely.
Right. So you got to stay very, very solidly on this path. So if you truly want to be happy, then you have to be you fully. And if you come to a point in your life where you have a conflict, then you need to assess how you should deal with that situation.
Yeah.
And you should deal with it in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It really does. And what I understand with cognitive dissonance, it's all about, and you have explained it perfectly well, the sort of a conflict between your attitude and your behavior. You have explained that well, but I'm just saying, right?
And the mindset that's in there is the idea of oh my God, this sucks.
right. Yeah,
you're in this turbulent mindset.
Cool.
And, you want to get yourself into the mindset of calm and exciting or dynamic and moving forward, but never in going down.
And that is the discomfort that you feel because of that disconnect between your attitude and your behavior. So you have explained it right. And the thing about it, John, I always say to my students, because I have dabbled into academia as well, that attitude and behavior is two different things. They're basically two different things. And the attitude is basically your belief, your emotional mindset. It's a mental thing. And your behavior is that activity. That your attitude will actually influence your behavior, right? And your attitude can be changed through what you are doing now. Talking to people will change their attitude. Indoctrinate them. Education does that. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I want to share something that's it's kind of unique and different. When you study Buddhism,
right?
I don't go off into spirituality too much, but I want to explain this one aspect of it. Everyone thinks the big famous quote from Buddha is "Life is suffering," but the interesting thing is when you look at that quote is translated into English,
right?
And the word that was translated into suffering was a word called dukkha. And in English, it does not translate correctly because the word itself has 3 English translations. And the reason it has 3 English translations is because in that other culture, it's one singular thought. But the only way they can convey that thought is to give you 3 translations. So the word dukkha means pain or suffering, means habitual response or belief from past experience.
Okay.
So when you look at it this way, life is about pain and suffering because of your habitual response, because of your subconscious beliefs. It's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Very interesting.
It's one core thought. That habitual response is based upon your subconscious belief. And if you can break that subconscious belief by staying firmly present and stacking present moments successfully, what happens is you fill your past experience with positive, successful moments. Because you're focusing positively, it's showing you positive, which creates an exponential growth behind you. And so you're consciously changing your subconscious mind. In Christianity, they would call that being born again, meaning set yesterday down and start new.
And that goes back to mindset. Yeah.
Right. It's all about mindset.
Yeah.
And it's the I am mindset. What are you? I am this.
Okay. Well, yeah. I am what I'm thinking. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
As Popeye would say, I am's what I am's.
Yeah. Very interesting though. And John, give me your views on this though, because what happened is that many times, I think you have, alluded to that somehow earlier. but many times the things that we're thinking about as being, well, we're fearful about, this thing will happen, it usually just never happens.
Right, right, right. It's so true. And no, nothing's going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. Right? It's very rare that everything happens exactly that way.
Oh yeah.
And it's so funny to me is in my life I have done amazing things. I mean, I'm very blessed in the things that I've done. I've been to 30 countries around the world, and I have,
Oh, yeah.
I've swam in the blue lagoons of Iceland. I've done
Yeah.
everything I've ever wanted to do in my life,
Yeah.
and it's only because of the fact that I knew I could, and I took my present moment and I leveraged them. And I created. I took my own creation in my own hands,
Mm-hmm.
and the subconscious beliefs that we talk about that limit us usually don't come from us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Usually comes from somebody else telling us we can't, or somebody else telling us that we're not good enough, or we failed at something, so we start to tell ourselves that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like when I talk to people about meditation. I meditate twice a day,
Right.
and
Okay.
I meet most of the people I talk to about meditation don't believe they can meditate, and I say, well, why is that? And they explain it to me. They say, well, I sit down, I quiet my mind, and I try to be quiet. And I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, did you pay your bills? A thought pops into my head, and I stop that, and I go back, and I go, and I start to be quiet again. I'm there and I'm being quiet, and suddenly it says, is the stove still on? Oh, stop that, stop, and you push it away. Well, the people who become really good at meditating are the people who learn to continually push those things away until the quiet times in between last longer. Consistency. You've got to create the habitual response, the habitual habit. And if you want that long, quiet meditation, then you need to be able to push it aside and let it grow to be longer.
Yes, John. Your advice as we wrap up. This is Canute Exploration. Your topic in the podcast. You're listening to Dr. Canute White speaking to John Davis. John, as we wrap up though, what advice do you have for persons out there who think that they cannot achieve the success is distance for them?
Okay, first thing I would say is, if you believe I cannot achieve and the success is distant from you, then you are not living in your present moment. Because what you're telling me is you can't achieve because something in the past said you couldn't, and that thing is distant because it's way in the future. What I say to you right now is get very present. Start stacking present moments here. Set your goal, absolutely, but realize that goal is, you don't have to get to it, it's coming to you, depending on the small moments. Only do small things, but stack them on top of each other and do them the best you possibly can here and now.
Yeah. One of the things that I've read on your website, this giving back. I cannot leave, John, without talking about this giving back thing. Talk to me about that.
I think it's important that if you are someone who is blessed enough to create an amazing life, and that literally, like I said, comes from you, then if you can create enough for yourself, you can create enough for others as well. In my life, I have done 6 USO tours to the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. I've raised enough money to send 2 kids to Walt Disney World through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I built houses for Habitat for Humanity. I've raised tens of thousands of dollars for homeless shelters in the Baltimore, Maryland region. And I also donated over 20 tons of food and clothing to them. I'm constantly doing something for somebody else. I've raised money for the American Cancer Society because I think that if you want to leave a positive wake behind you, you think of yourself as a boat going through life. You want to leave a positive wake behind you so that the people behind you have something fun to surf on. And so, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to leave this world better than I found it. And if we all started doing a little bit of that, just a little bit of that, the world would change dramatically.
That's so interesting. Leave this world better than I found it. That's amazing. I really do love that. And I think that many of us, well, all of us should take that into consideration. Leave it better than it. Contribute to it, to the betterment.
If all of us just did one little thing, there's 6 billion people in the world or something like that, right?
Interesting. Interesting. I love that. John, contacting you. Talk to us about that.
Easy to get a hold of me. CorporateActionHero.com. If you go there, you're going to find the links to YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. That's all on that page. But if you go to CorporateActionHero.com, and by the way, if you're going to go get that gift anyway, CorporateActionHero.com/gift, you're going to be on my website anyway. So look around. What you are going to find while you're there is that I do a daily vlog. Every day I put out a piece of motivation. And if you don't find it on there, you will find it on my YouTube channel, because I put it on my vlog, but it's also on my YouTube channel. And you can find just a little bit of motivation on there. You can subscribe to that channel, and every day you'll just get a little reminder from this bald head.
Hey, what about your number? Is there a number so that persons can call you?
I would prefer an email, and you can just basically the best way to do it is just click the contact form on my website, because my phone rings off the hook all day long.
Right. Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of work right now, and I usually don't even answer it. I let it go to the voicemail anyway. If you send it to my contact form, what happens is I will directly get that in my phone anyway. So that's the best way to get a hold of me, is through my contact form.
John, you are such an amazing person. I mean, Stuntman, I won't get there. I used to be in the military back in Jamaica. I am a military man like yourself. But
thank you for that service.
Thank you, man. Thank you too. Right?
Anybody in the military anywhere is an amazing person to me, because
of course,
right? I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, I tell you, right? But I couldn't touch that Stuntman thing. But thanks for that. John, this whole thing about watching movies, I always say that we look at movies as real. Hey, this is realism. This is real. But in fact, it's acting.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever we stop seeing it as real and start seeing it as acting, I think we'll lose that enjoyment. That's my view.
That's one of the reasons why when people ask me about what films and things I worked on, I don't like to talk about the films that I've worked on, because of the fact that I think it's like seeing the wizard behind the curtain in Wizard of Oz. You're losing the magic of the story, because the art form of film, the art form of movies is storytelling. It's our modern storytelling. And when you start tearing it apart and looking at the things, that's one of the reasons why I don't like spoilers. Is why would I want someone to take the experience of telling the story, before I get there? It's just dumb.
I agree with you. I agree with you, John. John, it was so nice talking to you on Canute's Exploration, your topic in the podcast. You're an amazing person. I do wish you all the best, and I'm sure that your words, your 5F concept will go out there, and people will be using it. Definitely. I have interviewed many persons, and I have been using some of the approach that were explained on my show, and I'm sure that this one will be a part of the whole portfolio of amazing stories, amazing approach for success and achievement. Thank you, John, for being with us, for being and Canute's Exploration.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. All right, we'll be in touch, John. Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Nice. That was John Davis on Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I'm Dr. Canute White. Don't forget to use his approach. Remember to go online and find John and see what he has there. corporatehero.com. Right? So please ensure that you find John, corporateactionhero.com, that is. Sorry about that. Please ensure that you find John and be a part of what he has going there, so that you will be taught, you will learn several things from John. Thank you for listening to Canute Exploration. Remember that we are still in a pandemic. Remember to wash your hands. Remember to wear your mask and to keep that distance. And I am an advocate of the vaccine. I have actually had both shots. So I'm not telling you to do it, but I'm encouraging you to take your vaccine so that we can get back out there and get back into real life. You will be seeing us again next week. We'll be having another interesting guest You never know who, you'll never know what. It could be psychology, education, politics, but another inspiring story, like Jan. And trust me, you will enjoy it. Keep safe. Thank you for watching. Those and if you're watching from your favorite, listening from your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you. Goodbye. Thank you.